Hey, good evening, everybody. Sammy Thunder here. Welcome back to the channel. As you can see on my right, I am joined by none other than Mike Moynihan, baseball collector. It's always a pleasure, Mike. Thank you so much for taking the time to
You bet.
have a conversation. Um, I reached out, obviously, to kind of just have another conversation since the last one we did was right before the National. And I was going to save it for before the National, but I figured, things are a little hectic then. So, I mean, time is always hectic depending on the circumstance, but I felt as though we have the Strongsville show right in our pocket, and I thought maybe this would be a good opportunity just to kind of catch up a little bit.
You bet. That's awesome. Thanks
Um,
for having me.
yeah, absolutely. So, the one thing that I never really got a chance to experience being at the National and you were there, um, when you're walking around, I know that you're looking to try to, if you're looking for a card, you're trying to find the best deal possible for yourself, the best bang for your buck. But I wonder what your patience level is in terms of finding that said card. Are you walking with a group of people when you're doing this? Are you a lone wolf? What is your mindset when you go into these sort of shows like the National?
Great question. I like to be a lone wolf when I hunt for cards because I don't want to hold someone else up, and I get admittedly annoyed, I guess, if they can stop and look whatever they want, but I feel like I need to wait for them, before I get. And what ends up happening is
Oh, you know what? I think
that was me, my
okay,
bad.
no problem.
But we end up hopscotching each other. I'll be looking at a table and they'll kind of go around and go up a little bit. And so rarely at a show, even like the National, when I have tons of friends there, do I walk exactly with a person. Now, that can change when at the end of the week, when I'm pretty much out of money, I'll be walking with a person trying to help them find a card, or trying to help them negotiate on a card. I've done that a bunch, and that's great. But early in the week is when I like to get a lot of my buying done, so that I have everything to choose from as much as I can, in terms of inventory that the dealers have. And I don't feel as bad when my phone is blowing up Thursday, Friday. Hey, Mike, come look at this card. Tell me if it's a good deal, and that's all well and good. It's just, wait a second, I'm looking for my own cards right now. So you have to be careful, because I never want to be a jerk to anyone, for sure. But so I like to lone wolf it, like, just let me go. Or I do have friends. JT is one in particular that he knows what my want list is better than I do. And so if he texts me and says, "Hey, I found a card you need, aisle 2182, or here's the booth number," I'm over there in a heartbeat, because he knows what I like, he knows what I'm looking for. And so that's different. But rarely am I walking around with someone just when I'm looking for cards. I want to be left alone.
Seems like there's a lot of overlap in terms of you know, like I know Rick vintage oddball cards very same way, and he can almost kind of he's becomes like almost like a method actor in terms of how dedicated and focused he becomes. I had a conversation with Orlando, Collector's Dream to those that don't know, but I had a conversation with him about where how he kind of takes his what kind of approach he takes. And I asked him, I said, "Well, let me ask you, if you found a card that had a very low pop count and it's something that really that you feel connects with you in your collection, like I know he loves Cuban cards, for example, if you see it, will you take the time to look into the price, of course, but will you go through the rest of the show like the National and try to find a better deal, or will you go right for it right then and there because you know that if you don't do it, somebody else will? Do you feel as though you have that same sort of mentality, or do you kind of exhibit a little more patience and because it being the National, there might be more opportunities elsewhere?
Great question. One of my biggest pieces of advice that I give people at bigger shows is walk the whole floor first. Don't buy anything on your first pass. That being said, and it's mainly because that's what I do, and that's because I'm looking for a, 52 Bowman Bob Feller, let's say, or whatever. Those aren't uncommon, and so the first one I see isn't going to be the only one in the room versus, say, a Cuban card or something that's super rare. I don't look for that stuff. So I'm not missing out on an opportunity potentially. And I certainly take notes and all that good stuff to know where take pictures. And okay, I got this one here. Let me keep looking and I may come back to this one. And if it's gone, it's gone. That's the nature of it. I break that rule occasionally. First pass through, I might see a deal I just can't pass up. But I've found that patience is served me well in not jumping the gun too fast. And so I'm a very patient buyer because I'm not buying the super rare stuff. All the vintage I'm looking for is not rare. And so there's plenty of it in the room. And I'm sure that Strongsville will be certainly that way. I'm not looking for the weird esoteric Tharp's ice cream so-and-so that, there might only be one in the room. Right. So, and again, the cards I need, if I can't find them in the show, they're all on eBay anytime I want, it's, am I willing to pay for it? So I just have a different mentality. Probably I would tell Orlando to stick with what he does, because he is looking. And, Rick is the same, guys that are looking for the crazy, rare, unique stuff, buy it when you see it.
Yeah, I think that kind of what provides that diversity in collecting styles. And you kind of see the more common stuff, like you mentioned, the Tops, the Bowman, stuff that you can sit back a little bit on and, wait to kind of pounce on the right opportunity. That said, I feel as though my experience of going to shows, you start building relationships with dealers, and you start noticing which dealers to go to. Is that your case where you have a list of dealers that you've purchased from, either purchased from before, have talked with them and discussed with them before on their inventory? Do you feel as though those are your go-tos first before you start going to some tables you haven't been familiar with?
Wow, that's a really good question with a multifaceted answer. Yes, I have dealers that I like dealing with because I know they just have good stuff. But at the same time, if that person's, in the middle of the show, I'll get to them eventually. I'm not, I try to be very systematic in going through a show so that I try to see everything, and I'll literally start at one end and make sure I row by row by row by row systematically go through it. Otherwise, I'm going to feel like what did I miss? How did I, where did I get screwed up? Or if I start in the middle, that jacks with my brain in a way that's not comfortable. And so I'm much more systematic as I go through it. To your point of what I like to deal with dealers that I've dealt with before, of course, especially guys that I know have the kind of stuff I'm looking for. But you got to understand, when I go through a show, Sammy, it's not hard, because you can tell if a table's modern, I'm going to skip it. Like I know what I'm looking for, the kinds of cards. And so if I don't see them, it's an easy walk past and keep moving to try to get, especially at the National, it literally could take you a day to walk the whole floor, an entire day. And so you better know kind of the genre. And if you see a guy that has a bunch of cool stuff, then I'll stop and take some time to make sure I'm going through that table more thoroughly. But there are dealers I like to deal with, and there's just guys like Stan always has amazing stuff. Ashish, Craig, Halbig, who I deal with a lot. Mm-hmm. But they're going to be there whenever I get to them. I don't rush to their table to try to pick through what they might have. I don't ever go to a show. I have a list maybe of cards that I'd like to find, but I never go, I'm looking for this card. And I buy stuff all the time that doesn't fit because it's a good price, it's cool, it's whatever, and um, so I like to not have an agenda. I feel like that kind of loosens me up and it takes the stress off a little bit.
Do you go into these like maybe not the national because I mean you've done it so many times, but this is your first time going to Strongsville, or is this
Yes.
your okay? So for Strongsville, I mean, there's going to be a lot of overlap in terms of familiarity with dealers. But do you find that going to these big shows, like I guess the Dallas show, I don't know if you've been to the Nashville show, but do you also consider these an opportunity to meet new dealers and hopefully establish some good relationships with some more dealers as well, so that in the future you could say, "Hey, I went to your table. I saw you had this last year. I was hoping maybe we can work something out." I mean, whatever it may be, but
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
wondering.
I probably should do that more, honestly. Uh, I don't really think about that a lot. I just I'm not trying to be their friend. I probably, that's a good strategy in terms of negotiating, but it's simple. They want to sell the card for as much as they can. I want to buy it for as little as I can, and somewhere in the middle is a price we're both not happy with, and that's probably a good price. And so I don't. I chum it up with them in the moment. I'm not thinking down the. I probably should be more forward thinking in that. Uh, but I don't go to that many shows where I'm not traveling around the country going to all these cool shows. And Dallas, same guy. And there are guys in Dallas for sure that I see every time that I go. I don't go to every Dallas show, but when I do go, I see the same guys, and they're usually willing, since I bought from them, they'll know me too. Because I don't buy, an $8 card, right? I'm not thumbing through their dollar box. In fact, that's another strategy that I don't employ. If the national, I will almost never go. If it's in a box, I'm not even looking at it. If it's if it's not in a showcase, no thanks. I'm a showcase shopper, and I'm not hunting for bargains. I'm not because all the cards I want are going to be in the showcase, most likely. And so unless they had, a 50s Hall of Fame slabbed box, which is rare, then that's a box I would go through. But most of the time, that's not true. And so the cards I'm looking for are out in the showcases. And again, if you see a bunch of vintage in a showcase, hey, what else do you have? I might ask the dealer, do you have anything else? Oh yeah, I got this box of these slabs that great. Let me look at them, but I'm not a dollar box, sit down at a dollar box for half a day and just thumb through and pull a bunch of dollar cards that are worth 10, or 5 or whatever. That's not my game at all. And nothing wrong with doing that at all.
Mhm.
To me, I feel like I have too much ground to cover. And so I only have enough time barely to look through the showcases, much less dig through all these boxes they might have to the side,
Considering so going on with the display case shopping in particular, when you do find something of interest and you haven't covered the entire ground, but you've seen something that catches your eye, but you want to, continue on. How many times would you say that you've gone back to a particular table and seen that gone and just reinvestigated that same card? Would it take you twice, three times? I mean, I guess it's all subjective depending on what the card is, but are you very cautious with your buying, or do you once you find it and you covered your ground, you go back immediately?
Typically I go back immediately.
Okay.
But I'm absolutely willing to walk away. Again, nothing I need is rare. I will find it again. I had plenty of times I've walked away and regretted walking away, and I've plenty of times I've walked away and I said, "Man, I'm so glad I walked away," because I was going to overpay to an extent that I was uncomfortable with it. And so, but there are times I've walked away and a year later I'm like, "Dang it, I should have just bought it," back then. So, but I'm not afraid to walk away. I don't I don't sit there and kick myself over it. I just mild regret, yes. Wish I would have bought it. However, it'll come up again and it'll be fine. Again, it's the long game. You just 40 plus years of doing this, you just never in a hurry to do anything. It's like, I'll get it today. I may get it tomorrow. I may get it next year, 5 years from now, 10. I don't care. I just eventually I'd like to get it. So it doesn't have to be today. And, but I will go back and try to do a deal. But I need to feel like I'm getting a good deal. I rarely pay up for a card, honestly. I'm not one of those guys that, and I say I'm a sucker if I pay sticker on anything. And so I just don't, and sometimes if a card's way overpriced, right, so high, there's no negotiating because where you need to be or where you want to be and where he is on that card. He's not going to go in half or something, even though you could show him all day long comps or whatever, and he'll just shrug his shoulders and say, then don't buy it, and I don't blame any dealer for having their prices, whatever their price is, that's fine. It doesn't mean I have to pay it, but they can ask whatever they want. And so I don't begrudge a dealer for that. I may mumble some, 4-letter words as I'm walking away from the table, but at the end of the day, they can price their cards for whatever they want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many I'm sure there's so many factors that go into it, with different dealers. Is there, I mean, for this upcoming for Strongsville, I mean, the big thing that I think there's a lot of people or the people that are going to Strongsville and the National, and myself included in this, is that we're concerned like, oh, I want to kind of I want to be able to have money for both, but it's, what if I spend all my money at Strongsville and not have anything for the National? Is that a concern, or I mean, or are you kind of budgeting so you'll have something for both?
I've already got the cash set aside for both, and I take a specific amount and I don't go over. Whatever I'm taking to the show is what I'm planning on spending. Doesn't mean I have to spend it, but I'm taking $5,000 to Strongsville, and that doesn't mean I'm going to spend $5,000. I actually might take more depending on, I'm selling some cards and stuff to try to raise some more money for a specific card, but so I might have more cash than that. But the reality is, to me, that's I don't know how to say this without sounding like a complete douchebag, but I'm not taking $100 to a show. I won't even drive to a show if I only have $100 to spend. I'm going to buy big cards. I can spend $100 sitting here in my house. I don't need to drive to a show to spend $100 in a card. I could do that in my sleep on eBay. I'm going to buy the comma cards. I'm going to buy bigger cards that I
think I lost you again, Mike.
Sorry.
That's
but
all
to
right.
spend, I don't know what you heard me say, but if I'm going to buy bigger cards, spend $1,000 on a card, I want to see it in hand. And that's what, to me, that's the value of going to a show. That is where a show makes a difference for me, to buy the bigger cards. So I'm bringing more money to buy a few cards, right? And if I can find cheap stuff, low-hanging fruit, $20 slabs, $30 slabs, $50 slab, great, but I'm always wanting to, what's the $1,000 or multi-$1,000 card that I'm going to add to the collection at this show? And so I pre-think what I want to take to a show like that or to the National. And I'm rare. I don't really have a card budget like a lot of people do. I kind of spend what I want to spend. All the bills get paid, don't spend money you don't have, but I kind of think, I'll take this, and that'll be good. That'll allow me to have fun and buy a card I really want to buy. That's kind of what drives the number for me, is what's enough money where I can either buy a bunch of cards or a big card and some other cards, and I never go to just buy one card either. That would feel like I don't know. I'd feel like I didn't get enough out of it. right? I'd feel like,
Yeah.
oh, I did all that for one card, that would, and there's people that do that. And again, this isn't a,
Mike, you keep.
I know I keep busting out,
No, it's great, man. The intensity is causing you causing you
right?
to mute your mic.
The way other people hobby, there's nothing wrong with doing it any way they want to do. This is just the way I do it.
Yeah.
And um I don't know. I love shows, by the way. I love the show experience. It's so much fun. Obviously, seeing people and doing deals in person is way more fun. And it's just a game to me. How cheap can I get a card? You know. But I would be disappointed if I didn't come home with anything. That would be disappointing. And so I will buy something most likely if I'm going all that way. And I'm excited about Strongsville. You've been before, right?
No, it's my first time as well.
Are you excited like I am? I'm glad they're moving it. I hear it's going to be much bigger this time. More
Yeah,
tables,
that's what I
all
hear too.
vintage. It's like, oh my gosh, this sounds like Disneyland for me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the one big takeaway for me is that there's gonna be stuff that you just don't see at your common show, that might be intriguing. So, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the national will be that way too, but this is more contained and more focused. So that's something that's to me more intriguing than other shows.
So I would think Strongsville for me might be a place where I stop and look through box because I know it's all vintage, right?
That's
And
what I hear.
so I do think I'd be more apt to slow down. I'm only there for 2 days. So
Mhm.
of the was it Friday, Saturday, Sunday show, I think,
Yeah.
right? So I'll be there Friday, Saturday. And I want to make sure I'm kind of nervous. I'm not going to get through every table because this isn't a show where you're going to skip half the tables because they're all ultra modern or whatever, right? Every table is going to be the stuff that I'm looking for. And so, or the stuff that I like, I should say. And I'm worried I'm not going to get through it. And I just need to be careful and intentional.
Well, I think Chris from Missouri made it like drove the point home that this show is not like the Philly card show or the Nashville. It's small. I mean, it's going to be bigger now because it's being moved over to a slightly larger space. But he was very much proving the point that this show is going to be small. So um, yeah, as you mentioned, you can dedicate more time, but I don't. It doesn't sound to me like you have to concern with not getting to every table because I think for 2 days it you should be able to cover the entire ground. Um, are you planning? I want to say that you're not going to be doing this because I don't think I can't remember if you have a history of doing this, but of bringing cards to trade. I think you just like doing straight cash for stuff, right? You're not a trader.
I trade $100 bills for cardboard. Yes. So I do trade, yes, but I trade cash for cards. I don't have, it's not like I have an inventory of, especially for the Strongsville show, for example, vintage stuff that I'm looking to get rid of because I have one of everything.
Hmm.
It's not, I have literally a tiny stack, like 6 slabs of cards that I've bought accidentally, and they're not worth bringing. It's a bunch of $20 cards. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I just as soon sell those to somebody else. And so no, I get it. I get why people would do that. And I know tons of people that operate that way and very smart actually. I don't have the inventory to do it.
I guess also it takes time away from what you're trying to accomplish as well. I haven't really done too much cards and cash kickers. I've done it maybe once or twice and I hated the experience. But
Why is that? Why did you hate the experience?
because it's such a I because I felt like every time I made a deal with a trade, I ended up getting swindled. And so I'm just not good at it for one thing. And the other thing is that um, when it comes to doing it with dealers, it has to be equivalent, like a one for one deal. And if you have two cards for one, you're gonna have to throw something else in there because it's so imbalanced. And
Yeah.
so, and I understand, they got to make money and so forth, but yeah, it's just not the vibe for me to try that again. So cash is king, as all the dealers say. So
It's great that you recognize that about yourself. Like, hey, I've tried it. Not really an area that I feel like I'm really good at. I'm
yeah.
not going to do that anymore. That's smart.
Hmm.
That's called wisdom.
Yeah. I try to exhibit it as much as I can. Um, is there anything? I guess, like, what's the? I don't want to ask you what card you're looking for because I imagine maybe you want to keep that to yourself, which is fine.
No, I
But
just don't know. I don't have one.
oh, you don't have one. You're
Yeah.
going in just trying to see what's there and going off of
Well, I have a list of 450 cards that I want. So
Mhm.
any of those would be great. you know, that's kind of, I'll take
Yeah.
that list with me.
Um, yeah, I mean, this, like I mentioned before, I guess there's going to be overlap. Like I know this guy Howard Chasser is going to be there. He's like a big Clemente guy, and um, I know Stan's going to be there, so there's going to be a lot of overlap. Um, to me, what's going to be interesting about this show is if there's not going to be any modern cards, is what is the ratio going to be like between like the old school collector crowd and versus some of the younger collectors? Because I mean, again, like I go to so many shows where I see modern tables, and it's just a huge distribution of younger kids there. So I wonder what that's going to be like at Strongsville, if there's going to be a crowd of younger kids, or if it's really you're not going to see any of them.
I think there will be a few kids, but I don't think nearly as many as you would see at, say, a Dallas show or a Nashville show or whatever. I think you'll see some young adults that
Hmm.
are in the vintage game, but by and large, it's going to be 40 and overs, would be my guess. And that's fine. That's my people. So that's okay.
And as just to mention, I know there's going to be a YouTube gathering that I don't. You and Chris are organizing, or is that mostly Chris, or is that you?
Mostly, it's all Chris. Really,
Yeah.
I'm just going to be one of however many that show up and excited to do it.
Yeah, it's going to be a really great time. It sounds to me from what Orlando and Chris were telling me like 40 people or sound it's a great number. I mean, I don't know what it's been like the past couple of years, but it sounds like that's going to be a nice gathering, a nice group of people.
Yeah,
Um,
for
are
sure.
you going by yourself or are you going with somebody else?
Andy and I are going together. He's going to
Okay.
drive down. Uh, she blinded me with refractors, Andy, and we'll go up. And what's funny is Andy and I couldn't be more different. Like my friends tease me because, the first day of the national, for example, they'll be like, "Well, how much money did you spend?" They know I go through quickly and I pounce on cards that I'm looking for. Um, in the first day, Andy will probably not in the 2 days we're there not buy a single card.
Hmm.
He'll have money to do it, but he's so picky and so particular on what he's looking for. I'm looking for pretty generic stuff, Tops and Bowman stuff. So
Hmm.
we're very different, and it's so hilarious. Like a bunch of us in our little friend group are kind of like, oh, what's the over under on Andy buying a card? And it's zero point 0.5 is the number of cards Andy would buy is the over under 0.5. So meaning you could pick 0 as the under and you could win, or he might buy one card so, but I love Andy and I are very, very good friends and really like brothers. And so when we travel together, we have a blast. We're staying together in the hotel and we have a good time at shows together.
It sounds great. I know you guys, yeah, a long-standing companionship in that way. So it's all looking bright towards a great Strongsville show and hanging out with everybody together. But yeah, Mike, thank you so much again for stopping by and
You bet.
talking a little bit. And is there anything else you want to mention before I cut this out?
Now I'm just excited to go and shake your hand again, and we're gonna have a blast. That's all I know.
Absolutely. All right, great. Well, thank you guys so much for watching, and appreciate it. And I hope everybody has a good evening. Take care.
Keep collecting.